Hello, welcome to Church Searcher. My name is Chris and today we're in the village of Ripley in North Yorkshire, home to Ripley Castle and itself home to the Ingilby family, who have been here for the last 700 years and in fact have just announced that they're going to be selling the whole estate here in the winter of 2024. We're going to be exploring All Saints Church, which is the final resting place of many members of the Ingilby family, including Sir Thomas Ingilby, who rescued King Edward III from a wild boar. We've also got some of his ancestors in there who were involved in the Gunpowder Plot of 1605 and even 1644, the English Civil War. Stay tuned to the end of the video where we'll be exploring the churchyard, home to the unique weeping cross, said to be the only one of its kind left in existence. So I'll see you soon here in Ripley after the map. So Ripley was originally an estate village. People living here would have either worked in the house itself or somewhere on the estate, on the land. Now in the 19th century it became fashionable for landowners to start improving estate villages like this, and they would essentially knock down dilapidated cottages and completely rebuild villages like this from the ground up according to a particular architectural plan. And so it was in 1850 here that Sir William Amcott Ingilby had the village completely rebuilt in a French Gothic style, inspired by a village in Alsace in France that he'd visited on his travels. So you can see all these cottages here built using the local stone, but in the French Gothic style. And even on the village hall, you can see it says around the top, Hôtel de Ville, which is French for town hall. We've got the beautiful French style village square as well, and it's in the square where you have the Boar's Head pub, along with the village fountain in the shape of a boar. So all around the village you've got boar's heads depicted on the town hall, in the square, and here on the gates to the castle itself. And we'll find out why inside the church. So this is inside All Saints Church here in Ripley, built around 1390 to replace the original chapel in the village, which is further down towards the River Nid and was known as the Sinking Chapel, because there on the banks of the river it was gradually slipping and sliding down into the river. So there's a lot of architectural features from that original chapel which were brought here into the church. So there's various little tombstones, there's the remains of the old Rood screen, but the most important feature for us is the tomb of Sir Thomas Ingilby and his wife Edelyn. So this is the tomb of Sir Thomas Ingilby. Born in 1290, died in 1369. He's famous because he was out hunting one day in Knaresborough Hunting Forest, not far from here, with King Edward III. And while they were out hunting, they were charged and surprised by a wild boar. And it came straight for King Edward III, threatening to gore him. And it was Sir Thomas here who rescued King Edward III and killed the boar. And so in gratitude, upon their return here to Ripley Castle, King Edward III knighted Thomas here, and so it was for that reason that they adopted the boar's head as a family crest. Now you can see that his head actually rests on a boar's head, which forms part of the crest of his great helm, the helmet that his head rests on. And he's depicted wearing 14th century armour, beautiful chainmail, some plate mail down near his feet, very intricate belt, and his feet are resting on a dormant lion, the symbol of the resurrection. Now beside him, also in 14th century dress with a wimple, is his wife Edelyn. Beautiful details again on the lion's head clasps on her dress, and her head rests on a pair of pillows. At the bottom, by her feet, is a small dog, a pug, which is the symbol of fidelity. And all along the bottom of the tomb, all the way around, are the mourners, and 6 of these are the children of Sir Thomas and Lady Edelyn, and they're depicted wearing the various clothes associated with their calling. Some of them worked as priests and clerics in the local area. Now to the side of the tomb, we've got this Rood screen here, which is from the original sinking chapel. So that was brought here, cut down to size to be used. But originally this would have separated the nave from the chancel, but it's quite a beautiful piece of solid hewn wood, thought to date back to the reign of King John between 1199 and 1216. But there's several other items from the original sinking chapel, including tombstones and a 14th century piscina and crescent shelf. The piscina was where you get rid of excess holy water, and the crescent shelf was where you would keep the bread and the water and the wine. You've also, right next to the tomb of Sir Thomas Ingilby, you've got this 14th century grave slab as well, said to be that of a priest. It's got a cross on it indicating that, along with a chalice and also a biblical text by the side of it. It's thought it might be the tombstone of the rector Joseph Morleverer, who was here in the 14th century during the plague outbreak here in the village, and he stayed behind to look after the local parishioners. So this is the tomb of Sir William Ingilby, born in 1546 and died 1617. And he's the member of the family who has this connection to the gunpowder plotters. Now, Sir William was actually knighted by King James IV of Scotland. He came to Ripley Castle and was entertained by William on his way south down to London to be coronated as King James I of England, uniting the kingdoms. Now, of course, King James I was the object of the gunpowder plot. Guy Fawkes and the other plotters had this aim of assassinating King James I, who was a Protestant king, so that they could then lead a rebellion and put a Catholic monarch on the throne. Now, Sir William here was related to two of the gunpowder plotters. Robert and Thomas Wintour were his nephews, and he actually allowed some of the plotters to stay here at Ripley Castle while they were gathering horses. So all around this area there were lots of families who were kind of interlinked and involved in many ways in the plot. Robert and Thomas's cousin was Robert Catesby, who was one of the plotters, and just down the road from Ripley is the village of Scotton, and that's where Guy Fawkes used to live with his mother. He was born in York, they moved to Scotton when she remarried, and of course Guy Fawkes was instrumental in the plot, famously discovered underneath the Houses of Parliament on the 5th of November with 36 barrels of gunpowder waiting to blow up King James. Now Robert and Thomas Wintour ended up being hung, drawn and quartered down at Westminster, and a similar fate might have awaited Sir William Ingilby. He was threatened with being put on trial, however he was acquitted before even going to trial. So perhaps this royal connection that he had with King James I, having made this great impression on him which caused him to be knighted, maybe that was enough to save him. Now the inscription here celebrates Sir William's honour and virtue. It has some beautiful poetry in it from the period, but it also has some puns on this name, Ingilby, drawing this analogy to a hard-working bee and a hive. So, you can see it here, to the eternal memory of the right, worthy and illustrious knight, Sir William Ingilby. Reader, dissolve in tears, else blame thine eyes. Worth, honour, virtue, here entombed lies. The bee which honey from each flower brought lives now eternally on what he wrought. A single bee, yet furnishing his hive with everlasting sweetness, dead to survive. The star he bore in arms, the star of grace, wandering ere, while but not now, twixt in his place. So the Ingilby family were known as Recusants. They were a Catholic family who refused to give up their faith in the face of persecution by the Protestant state. And Ripley Castle, in fact, has priest holes inside where the family would hide Catholic priests if the authorities came looking. They're hidden in the walls, behind panels and things like that. Now, Sir William's son, Francis, was actually a Catholic priest, and he himself was discovered in York, in a priest hole, belonging to a lady called Margaret Clitheroe. And both Margaret and Francis were executed as martyrs in York for their faith. Francis was hung, drawn and quartered, and Margaret Clitheroe was crushed beneath her own door. Now, opposite Sir William's tomb is the chapel belonging to the Ingilby family, and there's actually guilons hanging from the ceiling there, a type of flag which were carried at the front of Sir William's funerary procession. There's also lots of hatchments around the top and tombs from William's various descendants. Behind me here, a memorial to Henry John Ingilby, who was also the priest here. He notoriously closed all the pubs down in the village because he thought the villagers were spending too much time in the pub and not in church. The village was dry, therefore, for many, many years until the Boar's Head opened. There's also a memorial in the corner to two of the Ingilby children who passed away in the late 19th century from meningitis just a few years after each other. Down in the floor here, we've got the actual entrance slab to the crypt. Now, all around the top of the chapel, there's these funerary hatchments. They became fashionable in the 18th and 19th centuries. When a member of the family died, you would display these outside the front of your house on the first floor, usually. So they're made of canvas, and they've got a wooden frame, and they're essentially showing your heraldic qualifications. So you can see there's a few with mon droit written on them, so that's French for my right, and on those it's showing those heraldic qualifications there. So you can see there's actually a few of the boar's heads of the Ingilby family. He's also got the star as well, as mentioned on Sir William's tomb. You've also got the red hand, which shows the baronial status of that person, of the family. They were a baronet here. We've also got some Latin, resurgam, which means I will rise. And then on this one here, for example, Incilio quies. So Incilio means in heaven, and quies is from the root word requiem, to rest. So, in heaven I rest. So it's the next Sir William Ingilby, who lived between 1594 and 1672, who was a supporter of King Charles I in the English Civil War, and he fought at the Battle of Marstonmoor. So as well as Sir William fighting at the Battle of Marstonmoor, it's said that his sister also fought there, disguised as a man wearing a full suit of armour. And so after the defeat of the Royalists at Marstonmoor, Sir William and Jane escaped back here to Ripley Castle. So when news came of Cromwell and his men approaching, rounding up Royalist prisoners, it was then that Sir William hid inside the priest hole in Ripley Castle. And Cromwell and his men arrived here at Ripley seeking to billet in the castle overnight. And it's said that Trooper Jane actually held Cromwell off at the gates to the castle, refusing to allow him entry, claiming that it would be an affront to her dignity and reputation as a lady. And so eventually Cromwell acquiesced. He said the troops wouldn't come inside the castle to billet, and instead they would remain outside, perhaps in the courtyard or in the churchyard here, while he would be allowed to come in and sleep, held at gunpoint in the library by Sir William's sister, Jane Ingilby, who was henceforth known as Trooper Ingilby. Now it's against the wall of the church here. You can see there's all these pockmarks left behind, purportedly by musket balls of Parliamentarian soldiers, after they executed Royalist soldiers against the side of the church here who had been captured at the Battle of Marstonmoor. So here in the churchyard we've got the remains of the only surviving weeping cross in England. It's pretty unique and it's pretty monumental. You can see this is the base, and there would have been the shaft and the cross going up. So these were used as part of a procession on the feast day of Corpus Christi, about 60 days after Easter, and it would be used for a public atonement of sins as part of a procession, and people would come here to pray at the weeping crosses, asking for forgiveness for their sins. And it was thought that these niches, of which there's 8 all around the cross, would be where you'd put your knees to pray. But as you can see, that would be quite uncomfortable, but perhaps that was the point. More likely is that these are perhaps headrests for the penitent, so you're completely prostrate on the ground, your head supported by these niches. So in this small little church in the middle of North Yorkshire, we've got some quite significant national historical events represented. From the Gunpowder Plot, the rescuing of King Edward III and the English Civil War. Now, I'll leave you with one last little fact, but fast forwarding a little bit into the Victorian period. The beautiful ceiling behind me here has these printed designs on them. But if you look carefully, you'll notice there's one panel which is slightly different to all the rest. It doesn't quite have the same green foliage, and there's a little red stick missing as well compared to all the other panels. So this contains a little bit of hidden meaning, that we as humans, despite all our great aspirations, are fallible. We make mistakes. So, on that note, I'll leave you until I see you next time. Until then, keep church searching.